Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad to have you guys stay after the film. We had quite a full audience for the film on a Saturday afternoon. It's really wonderful to have you. I know we're just in a moment of like intense feeling right now. And when I screened the film the other day at the theater to myself, and I was wishing I had somebody to hug afterwards because
A witness.
It's really to witness that. And before we get started, let me just say on the memory of the children that were lost to the Dozier School and many others. We honor that memory and thank you for bringing understanding and hopefully justice to the situation. And I
Can I add
truly
something?
think, yeah, please do. Like
No, go ahead.
no, it's like so profound that I feel that my relationship to the topic as a Black woman and as a someone who has Black children is so deeply entrenched, and I'm so moved, and I just want to have some way that we just acknowledge them, because sometimes films about true stories, people get caught up in the technical and the commercial aspects and forget the story.
But also, I think you can get caught up in the narrative aspects as well.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to add while you were like so emotionally offering space, is there like a thought I've been trying to flesh out is the idea of an experiential monument. And I think there's something to, in regards to the way in which we thought it was something of the past, but it seems to be something that is even more prominent in the future, the deep erasure of history, like the burying of facts about, race relations or just reality, that there's something about being able to make a monument for someone that is physiological, that's sensory, that you take into your body, and it kind of is capable of living somatically, and therefore sort of living psychically, and it's passed on through that type of experience. It's more difficult to take away, and it also like quite literally brings like cellular life to the people who endured the things that none of us here have endured. And so I think of this as an experiential monument.
I appreciate that, because I feel that what you created was an elegy to their memory. And I almost don't want to just say memory, because many of the survivors are still with us. And the film is, fictionalizing a true story about a school named the Dozier School in Marianna, Florida, that was created in 1900 and wasn't closed until 2011. Very recent. This is all coming about now, actually, and it's interesting because I'm not sure how many read the book, but there's also a conversation about gentrification in the book. And one of the ways in which the information came out about the school is that they were developing the land for housing and commercial uses and found the remains of from these unmarked graves.
Even darker is that one single student, a woman, saw a bone that looked a little bit strange, picks it up, takes it to their professor, and the professor's like, looks like a raccoon. But there's something, this is also like educational space, because they were from the University of Southern Florida. They're like, let's just go, let's take this through the process. And then it was human. And then that's how.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't even the actual digging. There was one that was above surface.
I appreciate that they found 55 bodies at least, but also remains, like you show in the film, of the iron rings and things that were used to, hold the children and stress positions, all these things. This school was right next to a school called Jacksonville Juvenile Offender School. And what I learned is that Jacksonville Juvenile Offender School was considered the worst place to be sent, and kids would be sent from Dozier to that school. And I can't imagine a worse place, but they said it was worse because it was also had bars and prisons, and it was not an open campus, but a closed campus. And so a lot of bad things happened there. The United States Department of Justice did research on this around 2011, 2012, and found overwhelmingly that, the staff wasn't trained, that they purposely were abusing children out of sight of the cameras, that later they have surveillance cameras.
Oh, wow.
And that there was, massive kind of knowledge and complicity for years. You can imagine over a century that this was going on. And add to the fact that it was in many other places, Mississippi, Alabama, but also across the United States, indigenous schools, which is coming out a lot in Canada right now, but is equally and perhaps even more profound in the United States, were very much similar to this. There's indigenous boarding schools that were like the kind of idea that they were giving rehabilitation to these children, which they weren't. It was about, kind of assimilating indigenous children.
I think there's a documentary this year called Sugarcane that
about Canada.
Yeah, about one in Canada. Yeah, so recommend you all, as I'm sure you'll do some research online to check that film out.
Some of my students are here today and teaching a class called Women of Color Feminism, and we got into the question very much about girls, especially Black children, and state violence. And one of the things that I think is so interesting is that, like you said, in narrative films, sometimes the tendency is to see this about what's happening to the characters, right? And even the characters themselves have a limited view of what's really going on around them. And in your film, you have this really subtle way to show that Elwood becomes really aware of the corruption that this school was involved in and how deeply it was entrenched into the town and the economy of their town. Because people ask, how could something like this continue for so long? Well, it turns out that not only does, the school provide jobs for the town, it's also a site where they're getting free labor. The real Dozier School, they had a printing press and they made bricks. In your film, they're picking oranges and other kinds of labor. So it's a continuation of the plantation system that the 13th Amendment allows slavery conditions when someone is in a criminal, considered a criminal situation.
It's, it's quite difficult to make a film about it and not overemphasize that, because that's such an important element of how it was allowed to continue. Like you said, it's integration, and on the surface, they're doing productive things. And so if you hear of some mischief and some violence, you tend to just think that it's isolated because look at all the things they're doing. But, the film, like, we had elements and we just kind of couldn't work them all in. Like Nora Mendez, who was an incredible production designer, she built the White House and it was like a functional space, right? So when we had the extras come in and we had Turner and Elwood, Ethan Harisi and Brandon Wilson, they all thought that was actually part of the campus that we were on because it looked so real.
Wow.
All the bricks had the Dozier stamp on them.
Wow.
And like we just couldn't work all the information into the film.
So where did you film and how did you create that set? And what were the considerations you were doing in creating the space? Yeah,
it's quite difficult because you can't do everything, and really wanted to emphasize the labor element. But we found a location in Ponchatoula, Louisiana. We shot everything in Louisiana. And the town that we shot in, where the Martin Luther King cardboard cutout, you see that, and they're on the streets, is in Thibodaux, Louisiana. And then we shot a bit in New Orleans proper. But I think the considerations are speaking to what you opened with so succinctly, which was that this is not a thing of the past, it's a thing of the present. So how do you make a film about the 60s that feels like it's actually now, and not make it seem like it's something that, well, that happened way back then, or it happened specifically in this location. Like, don't overemphasize the icons of the landscape. Don't overemphasize the geography, while also still trying to give it the Southern feel. It's something Nora Mendez like so concisely said, which was that we have to make the building, when this is filmed, 1960, that building would still be in use for 70 more years, for 60 more years. So we have to build it so that we could walk into it now and feel like it's present.
And actually, the survivors call themselves the White House Boys.
Yeah.
See, I want to cry again because it's so overwhelming. But okay, I wanted to ask you about a ton of stuff, but we're going to have questions later from people. But since you're talking about the temporal aspects, somehow you succeeded in this, something that the novel does, but was very hard to do in film, which is to move between time, using this moment, you have the pre-incarceration childhood moment and these beautiful kind of memories that are just, like you said, very somatic and very vivid and tactile. One of my favorites being the Christmas tinsel that reflected my own childhood of laying under the Christmas tree and looking at the lights and looking up at my mom, and who, rest her soul, remind me so much of the Nana
of
character.
Anjanou, Oh man,
she's so wonderful, and her love was just like a whole character in itself. But the way in which you go from that to the institutionalization to the post life of Elwood, and use these techniques from point of view, but also setting and the use of him confronting the discovery of the school online. You're kind of brought into this moment. I wondered if you could talk a bit about, what were the challenges of doing a film like that takes place across time, and how did you kind of think about that? I mean, you are a documentarian, so you did this film that's very kind of current on the South, and have such a kind of view that really takes seriously the humanity and the space and the sound. It almost puts us there, but yet you're also able to make us time travel.
Man, I love the way you talk about the film. We got to figure out how to just take you with us.
Okay.
Man, I don't need to say anything, really. No, I'm serious.
I'm supposed to be asking a question.
No, it's like really refreshing that you see the film in the ways in which you've articulated it. Hell County This Evening is trying to produce place as best as possible without essentializing the narratives of the protagonists who live there. It's trying to remove the exciting event from the element of narrative in cinema in order to force you to think about the conditions that produce the decision to do the things, as opposed to focusing on the thing, Oh, Mike Brown just shouldn't have done that in the store. If he wouldn't have done that, it's not about, it is about that because he has agency, he has free will, but there's a constellation of historical and contemporary elements that produce this moment, And trying to deal with the complexity of the narrative and the filmmaking process. One, you have to have collaborators who are, I always say collaborators who are smarter than you. For all you filmmakers, you need people who genuinely challenge you, but who are genuinely on board with your idea, so that you always have something to reflect back what you're doing, so then you can actually make a decision if it's the best idea. Because quite often as artists and as makers, as writers, we have an idea and we can just get in our own ricochet chamber and everything sounds good. Oh, this doesn't sound good, but if you have someone to push back against, you can develop it, in conversation. And so my writing partner, Jocelyn Barnes, she's just a wonderful thinker and producer and writer. We worked all these things out, before we get into production, and before we get into pre-production, we had the greatest blueprint ever, which is Colson Whitehead's book. It's
outstanding.
Yeah.
Pulitzer Prize winning.
Yeah, and we agreed to do it and read the book before it was released. So it's like Dee Gardner and Jeremy Kleiner and David Levine from Anonymous Contact and Plan B, they had read the book. They got an advance copy because they did Underground Railroad with Barry. And they were like, this is unbelievable, you know? And then was fortunate enough to be asked to adapt.
They came to you.
Yeah.
How'd that feel? They saw Hale County this morning.
Yeah, but honestly, when it happened, I'm like hesitant, you know, because
it's big.
Yeah, no, but also, I don't make movies on that scale because everything I heard about the process, you know, like I can do my own thing, make my own decisions, you know, I don't have to, I get to choose, but the content was so rich and the opportunity to imagine within it was genuinely unprecedented.
Wow.
You know, I don't know any other Black filmmakers who have given a Pulitzer Prize winning book and been gifted imagination space in it, you know? And so to populate...
Because they let you adopt the book for the script, for the screenplay, and as well as direct, and you're coming from a situation where you were working very independently, you know, to make that documentary. And also, you're a professor at Brown in the Department of Art. And did you get enough sabbatical time to make this film? You owe them credit.
I did. Thank you, Rick Locke. You know, he was a provost. Appreciate it.
I can imagine UCSB saying,
thanks, Jill Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I'd be like
Chris
begging
Paxson.
for a course release to just go direct, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, they gave me time off to even promote the film, like I'm supposed to be. Yeah. Yeah, they're very kind.
Yeah. Could you talk to our school about that?
Yeah, I'll send them a quick email that's just like, be easy on her.
Thank you. I need that.
doing the work.
I love it. I think that I can imagine that that's a big step up and a bit intimidating. And then you got a talented team. Let's just, your cinematographer, can we just talk about?
Yeah, Jomo Frey is a super talented dude.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, right. He knows camera systems. He knows. He knew how to like produce the environment to get the feeling that we wanted. I'll tell you all, one of the most difficult things I've come across in general, like as a documentarian, and a photographer, I know how to frame, and like frame really well, I think, for my own sensibility. But I frame the real world, and when I'm working with my characters and protagonists from the community of Hale County, I take them out into the world, and everything's pre-existing, and so you work with what's there, and then you get that feeling. But to produce that from scratch, like Nora Mendes is set design, and then Jomo's lighting, that is difficult, if not impossible. But yeah, Jomo.
What were the biggest challenges to creating that world?
I'd say the biggest challenges were the time in the world, because we have the talented people, but the process of making films this scale, especially with the background I have, and so I'm not gifted, rightfully so. They're not going to give me, Christopher Nolan time,
We all wish.
Yeah, we all wish. We have 3 hours, and we have to get this shot that's supposed to feel sincere, authentic, poetic, lyrical, symbolic, metaphoric experience. Like, I mean, how do you?
So it wasn't enough time for you? Like you felt like you had to rush, or did you also feel like the time spent in that space actually brought you into that space, and it was a pressure of that time, feeling the confinement?
I think it's more the latter, in that the resources you have and the rules that are imposed on you and the rules you produce creative solutions in that, that you use your strength to exploit. And so I can imagine a film in which we had more time, but we had enough time. We had enough, like we got it done.
Wow. How long was the shoot from beginning to end?
I was 33 days, but then we lost 4 days to COVID. I got COVID the first day.
What?
And then Nora got it the second day, and they shut it down.
So when did you start? What was it, during the middle of COVID, before?
It's like 2001. Yeah, like right after. It was crazy.
Shooting during that time was pretty stressful.
Yeah, everyone was wearing masks and stuff. It was, yeah.
How did you find these amazing talents in these young actors? I mean, a part of me just like, I saw the film a few days ago and I keep thinking about them and dreaming about them and hearing their voice as if like they were my cousins. I felt related to them. In fact, one of them reminded me of my cousin.
Which one?
In Alabama. I have a cousin that I had a crush on when I went there when I was 13, and he looked just like Turner.
Okay, yeah, Brandon Wilson.
Yeah, so it's weird that I had a crush on my cousin, but yes, anyway.
It's okay. This is a safe space.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's not being recorded. Recorded in perpetuity.
Yeah, okay, exactly. It's just kind of weird. I admitted that. But you know, I had like they felt so familiar, but what a phenomenal job they did. What kind of direction or conversations did you have with them about those roles?
Well, you know, like talents like these exist out there. You gotta seek out the ones that to find them. You have to choose the ones that haven't already done it. You know, we wanted boys young men that weren't like deeply familiar, so we wanted to kind of discover them.
Yeah.
Casting director Vicki Thomas, and
Fabulous.
Each one of those two were exemplary in their casting tapes, and it wasn't because of what you think. It's not like they killed the character reading, you know? It was just that, I like to say, almost everyone else was performing a historical character. They're like, oh, 1960s, black boy, and a little accent, like a little this, little that, like done their research. And Brandon just had something that was so of just a boy that's now, that is also just a boy then. That was just like easy, like he has that contortionist disposition, as I like to say. And then Ethan had a little bit more of like that quality existing in his face. Like when doing his reading and like looking up, he just has those eyes.
So expressive.
Where it's just like the moment when you look up at Turner and we're in Turner's perspective, and we swap it.
Yeah.
You're gonna crush it, you know?
Can we just talk about the point of view? And also, I'm really curious about the point of view. And also the 4:3 aspect ratio of the film, which is very like old school vintage. Could you talk about some of those technical choices? Because, I mean, one of the reasons that it's so affective, the film, is that we're in the position of those children. But it's not a voyeuristic at all. It's about inhabiting their space and identifying with embodiment in a way that, to me, really is different from the historical tradition of filmmaking and photography and visual culture about black bodies, which has always already been voyeuristic, and particularly about objectifying the difference of race. And so your approach, both technically, maybe spiritually, profoundly.
I mean, that's the origin of it, and that's why it feels different.
Yeah, it feels different, and it feels like you are offering us an opportunity to inhabit their point of view for a while, which feels like a gift.
Yeah, so when I made Hell County this evening, I began to realize, I began to be more in dialogue with the documentary aesthetic, which is this objective fly on the wall language. And we know now, at least they didn't acknowledge then, but we can express now that you cannot observe something without changing it. The fly on the wall is changing the space. And it may be subtle, but there's something happening there. And I realized that I was more interested in the authorship of the camera because it feigns objectivity. Like the way that camera is sitting there right now makes it seem like there's no operator when someone watches it. But we know that this angle was chosen intentionally, and it has a point of view, it has a culture that it was born in, it has an ideology in which it emerges from, in its, feigning of the third person. And so I've always wondered, like, why we are first-person people. Everything is first person. I always wondered why camera language didn't start on the inside of the body and then come out, as opposed to start on the outside and come in. But but it hasn't really been in. But we know that this is just the nature of cinema because cinema takes its cues from theater, and theater is outside of the body because you're watching the folks. And so in Hale County, I developed this language called observational logic, which to me is the observation mode of documentary, but using the logic of vision. And the logic of vision is about attention. And so it's long lenses and shallow focus so that when I'm moving, you have no choice but to follow what I'm seeing. Right. You're seeing with me, but I'm still observing, but you know it's authored. You cannot say that this is not authored. Right. And that seemed to be an intervention in just the relationship between the camera and its objectification. Yeah. And giving that.
And objectivity as this falsity of so much of documentary film and photography.
Yeah.
Right? Which so much of photography emerged out of the kind of coloniality of visuality, thinking about the role of photography in anthropology and the conquering and division of Africa, right? The photographer was part of that movement and in documenting that and documenting the other. And so it always had this kind of false objectivity, like the pseudoscientific view.
And it didn't have to.
Didn't have to, but they were choices.
The only reason why I did, one of the reasons why I did is because the camera was born during modernity and enlightenment. Right. And so people are taking the camera across to other places and first using it to replace perception. They're using it to replace you being in that place. And then when they're bringing back this image, our interaction is interpreted from Western ideology. Right. And so there's no relationship to the camera and the people in front of it without it going through seeing those other people as indigenous pejoratively, native pejoratively, third world pejoratively, tribal pejoratively, not as smart as us because we have this and we have that. That's right. That language is what's built into the camera. So it didn't have to be that way. It's just, as I like to say, the teleology or the utility of the zeitgeist the camera was born in. You have to ask yourself, what's a polytheistic lens? Like, what is a lens that was born in Buddhism? What is a lens that's born in Taoism? I'm not saying that people aren't killing people in the name of Buddhism, because we know there are. They're marauding monks that are just like murdering people. It's horrible. But those thought systems produce different relationships between the camera, which when I was taught to use is like, as a photographer, you have a camera, it points to something and says that's important. But to me, that othering is tied to Christianity, in which there's a separation. In a lot of those other religions, there's no separation. Now, we perceive separation. We're conscious of separation, but there is no separation. And so, yeah, back to your point, this is how the camera was born into our brains.
That's interesting. See, we're getting the art professor lecture, which is really, really helpful. I mean, I see it linked to ways of belief system that are also fundamentally tied to capital and race, which is, fundamental to the Enlightenment as well. And speaking of that, as you were talking about the techniques, one of the kind of crucial moments in the film is around the boxing match with Griff and I think in the book his name's like Big Chet or something. Chet. Yeah, it was Big Chet.
Yeah.
And that was such a profoundly tense moment because right before we get this voyeuristic view of them hiding out and overhearing, that it's really a setup. And so what we come to learn in the course of that scene is that not only are these children's labor being extracted, but the entire economy of the film is really extracting from the work that he does on community service with Harper, right? They're selling the food that was meant for the children and the supplies for the children to local store owners at cut rate prices so that they can profit. Then all those guys who are, kind of the elites of the town come to the fight and they're all betting on the fight and they want to rig the fight so they can make yet more money, right? And so it's so interesting that we see that kind of moment and we're expecting it. But sadly, that child made a mistake, right? He just got carried away, and all the
thought it was
children
the
got
second.
carried away, thought it was the second round. The way that they were rooting for him. But he was the bully originally. He was the one who was trying to assault the younger child, the whole reason why Elwood gets sent to the White House, right?
Well, Black Mike hits him, but
Yeah.
they're all in cahoots.
They're all
Like
in
this,
cahoots.
it was going to happen. Yeah.
It was going to happen.
Yeah.
But at the time, none of those differences matter. It's about the solidarity of like, our hopes are pinned on you in this moment. And it really struck me as this like powerful moment. Even Turner gets carried away, and he knows he's not supposed to. Don't have hope. This place is not for hope. And there's something so profound about the violence of that scene, because it is the illogical nature of the violence that makes it so terrifying in the narrative, in the film. And I think you captured that in a few ways, in the confusion of that child after he wins, in the looks and the stress between Elwood and Turner in that moment, like knowing what's going to happen. And we also know that, I think it was just before that, where they visit the backyard where nobody returns, and they find
Boot Hill.
Yes, Boot Hill, which is where those metal things had actually grown into the trees. I feel like the trees in the film are another character, and that is also a profoundly Southern statement about the trees as witnesses, and as, being forced to be part of the violence that I don't think the trees wanted to be part of. They don't want to be lynching trees. They don't want to be torture trees. They want to be the trees that the child looks up and plays with the dead leaves, and in that first scene where he's just at peace. They just want to be trees, right? And so there's these wonderful gestures and moments to these moments of illogical horror and extractive violence and the structural aspect that's bigger than them all. And I just wondered, like, how did you harness those moments and think about them when you're adapting the book and sitting there visualizing, how am I going to translate this into something? How did you feel about those moments, and how were you careful? And every time I felt like you were so careful with those moments to not exploit them, to not sensationalize them, to be with such a light touch that it lets us kind of deal with the weight of it.
Well, I'm reminded when you're talking about the exploitation of something I read Michelle Wallace, the theorist Michelle Wallace wrote. And I don't remember what book it was, but I remember so vividly her saying in summary, you could relate the totality of the Black experience. You could summarize the Black experience with the word consumption. And while there's many ways to summarize many things, and that's a huge reduction, thinking about things through that lens clarified for me the relationship between the photograph and culture in general, as 99% of almost all images of people of color have been made by not people of color.
Yes.
And so my art practice has been about figuring out strategies, at least photographically, to undermine that power dynamic, that consumption, come up with things like strategic ambiguity, where you make a photo that has plural narratives built into it, using sort of skin as content, Black skin as content, so that which it just is content, so that the reader of the image is forced to contend with their interpretation, and they know it's an interpretation because the image is so ambiguous. And that means that they can't consume, their imagination is suspended. So I like to say they're suspended in an arc of meaning, And with that, there's a version of that in which I came up with called the epic banal, which is these images you're seeing.
I love that, the epic banal. Okay, good.
Yeah, and this is, the imagery in Hale County is the epic banal.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I look for.
Wow.
I look for a moment that is very commonplace in everyone's life, like the way that the light is hitting your shoe, but when you film it at a certain angle, you're in dialogue with photography, and you wait long enough, like quite often something will happen where it elevates it to it being like cosmic and it being a metaphor and it turning into being symbolic. but it's also just light on your shoe, you know? And that
if you have the eye for it.
Yeah.
I think you have to have the eye for the epic aspect of the banal.
But sometimes it's just about, like, one idea for Hale County, because, like, I watched Terrence Malick's Tree of Life, incredible film. I'd recommend everyone watch it if you haven't. Some people don't like it, I love it. And I'm like, no one would ever give a black guy, and this is me just brooding, nobody would ever give a black guy $100 million to make a masterpiece. So if I don't have those resources, like, what are my resources? Oh, my resources are time. Like, I'm relatively young. Hopefully nothing tragic happens in my life, and I get to live a long life. So I'll spend more time filming. I'll look longer than anyone's ever looked. That's what I'll do. Oh, no one's ever looked long enough at the black community.
That's true.
Everybody's always, and I say this generally speaking, like, there are artists, of course, who have been working against this for many years. Everyone is going into the black community. Whoa, the directionality of it, people go into the black community. The black community is not the center of and like all these revelations start coming out. And I realized that I'm interested in looking long enough in the same way you look at words until they sort of break down and they rebuild themselves. Looking at human beings with that type of time, so the social constructions dissolve and then manifest themselves. You find the epic banal, which is, to me, focusing on the elements of life that are counter-narrative, because we tell ourselves the same narratives, and then that becomes the only thing we know, the only thing we have, the only thing we can reference, and we don't realize, or we do realize, but it's not often explored that and explained that we know, like, life is in the seams. And just because this event happens to us, however tragic, does not have to define us. It's our choice to let it, but quite often from the outside, people force people into being defined by the things that are the markers of their narrative. And so how do you use poetry and the epic banal to be in between what we know to be flagpole moments in people's lives?
That's so beautiful, so profound. And as you were speaking, it brought me to the vision, and I really wanted to ask you about this. The use of, there's the Christmas lights, the roller coaster, and then the footage of, like, Apollo 8 and the rocket ship. And for me, it related to MLK's Zion Church speech, right? Mount Zion Church speech, where he talks about his daughter, Yolanda, who only wants to go to the amusement park. She wants to go to Funtown. And he has to explain, it's really heartbreaking to explain to his daughter why she can't go to Funtown. And how it just, the logic of segregation never made sense, but to have to explain it to a child who, of course, would be questioning that logic. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why can't all children go to fun? Don't we all want to have fun?
Yeah.
And I think that I loved your use of those moments, and they came off as kind of, maybe people hadn't read the book, didn't know, but the feeling they gave anyway communicated that sensibility of how Black children have been denied that imaginative freedom.
Exactly. It's so, but it's so quiet and invisible, and everyone thinks and knows, because they have some trauma and some version of a social construct, some sort of image that precedes them, that it's equal.
Yeah.
I grew up poor too. I got this. Yeah. The contradiction of race is such a fiction. It produces delusion and psychosis, right?
Absolutely.
It should, right? And I'm glad you're pointing to this, because one core thing is, like, how do we, in the film, viscerally produce that contrast?
Yeah.
And it's all imaginative, because I didn't grow up with Jim Crow and those race rules. Like, I grew up in the suburbs of Northern Virginia, and I'm a middle class kid, so I had everything I wanted, and we went on vacations, and, like, I lived a great life, you know. How do you imagine to be born in the 60s, and to be a human being, and to touch for the first time, to feel wind for the first time, to literally lie in the grass for the 8th time ever? Like, when you think a kid's being bad, No, a kid's just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
You know, has no idea what's going on.
This is children who grew up in South Central in LA who'd never have been to the ocean.
Right?
Because segregation, because they didn't have access to the beach.
But then when you have the human experience and the freedom that is implied through having a body and a mind, and then you're put in contrast to, or you're confronted with a guy on the street who pokes you with a cane because he thinks you stole something, or the looks of someone from whatever way, and then you beginning to, in the Fananian way, in the Charles Cooley-looking glass self kind of way, oh, that's who I am, that's how they see me. I can't do that, actually, or if I do that, I have to do this. That produces psychosis, right? Like, it has to.
And it does.
It's crazy.
What you do in the film so much is allow us to see what the black child's eyes are allowed to see and what the black child's eyes can't see or are deflected from seeing or not allowed to see. And so those inward visions of that ride up the roller coaster or the way that the Christmas lights look and the tinsel and the kind of the moon, those kind of, that is the imaginative space that then gets internalized because we're not allowed to see outward. But yet that desire and the dreaming of freedom remains. And I think that it is something that, so I have a great cousin, Jeff, who
You have a crush on him, or was it?
No, this was the other cousin.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted...
He was older, I'm sorry about that. But come on, it was, you know.
I'm only saying that because we're on camera.
He was like a third, fourth cousin. My mom didn't have any sisters or brothers. So, and he was married in, okay. But
I'm just joking.
Fourth removed.
I'm just joking.
But
yeah.
Jeffrey, no, sadly, he committed suicide in the 80s. He had been in and out of detention in Alabama through his childhood. And I didn't know what that meant until I confronted this book in your film, that it reminded me of Cheeky Pete and him, you know, he's broken, he's an alcoholic, his hands are ruined, he can't do music anymore, he's looking for a job. But when he sees another survivor, they gotta stop and, you know, share space for a moment. It made me remember that cousin Jeff. I only have like a few photos, and everyone said how sad it was. He committed suicide. He never got over that past hurt, but I didn't know what that past hurt was until that moment. And I think that that's part of what made me feel so deeply. I'm like, wow. A lot of us probably have family who've been in that situation. It's not something that was rare, you know. And I also had a mother who had dreamed growing up in New York, but very segregated. New York is very segregated too, and she grew up in a boarding house in Harlem. That she dreamed to be a doctor, and she had a teacher in her school tell her, you can't do that. And, you know, the best you can do is maybe go work at the phone company. And that's what she did. She did that her whole life. She became an operator, and then later technician. But
and I want to address that, like,
dreamed that.
I want to address that because there's always, human beings want to compare, and they also want to think that other people's struggles are equal to theirs. There's like a false equivalence in that I know people in this audience have had people tell them they can't do things. But for Black culture, there's always been proof that you can't. And there has been no evidence that you could.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean that there weren't one or two or three or four exceptions, but as Chris Rock says, my neighbors are dentists. Like,
right.
I make millions of dollars a year making people laugh, and my neighbor's a doctor, you know?
Which means you can imagine differently for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that we're only starting to scratch the surface of what it means to allow Black children freedom to imagine. Such a beautiful film. I know we have to go to Q&A now.
We do?
So apparently, I could talk all day, but sorry, everybody, this was a long film, and this is such a fascinating and talented person to speak to. We are going to take questions from the audience.
I'm not calling her, but Madame, she just seems so enthusiastic. We have to, I mean, like, that hand was.
A microphone coming, because they're going to have to get her question on the sound on.
First of all, I just want to say your film is absolutely brilliant. It truly is brilliant. I can't wait to see it again because there's so much to it. And I also want to congratulate you on all the awards you're receiving already, the Gotham Award and several others. I was at Dateline Contenders a few weeks ago, and Angela Ellis, anyhow, she talked a little. You were being interviewed, and she talked a little bit about how she was a little upset with you, and because of how you made her perform in this film. So would you elaborate on that and let the audience? I know you were just over at the Riviera Theater, and she was with you, and you were just interviewed, but I had already decided to come see it here. But if you wouldn't mind repeating that story, because I thought that was really fascinating, and the way you did film this is really tremendous. So continued. I hope you get many more awards and get nominated for an Oscar. So there you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you better.
I must say that Ingenue says that in jest, the anger. So I don't want you all to think that I'm some manipulative director, though I do have my ways. Be sure. No, it's funny to talk to Ingenue, because when you're making a film. Because I didn't know Ingenue before, and Ingenue is a hardworking actor and has a lot of stuff going on. You don't get to spend so much time. I got to spend a lot of time with the guys because they're hanging around more. But Ingenue she was in. We chatted a bunch before, met before. She came in a couple days, and then she headed off to the next thing. The boys were with us the whole time, so we got to go to Waffle House and hang out. So I got to hear about Ingenue's experience after the fact. And I will say, she does say that in defense of her being angry, that this was the most fun and most challenging set she's ever been on. And she kind of misses it. But the frustration and confusion that you're mentioning that Ingenue felt, as well as some of the other actors, was, of course, the POV dynamic, which we called sentient perspective, which is, of course, the camera and the camera operator, of course, replacing the character so that you are the camera, you are the character. You're living concurrently with them. You're allowed to experience the world at the same time, at the same visual, perceptual moment as the character is encountering the world. And for an actor, specifically Ingenue, which has hesitations about the camera in general because of all the complexity we've talked about in its history, she doesn't trust cameras. When she reads the script and she sees POV, she just reads it as words, POV, and then goes into the character. We never talked about the actual process. I didn't talk about the process with any of the actors. And why? I never thought about it. And in hindsight, I think it was because I don't want to overburden them with these high concepts that we're thinking about in terms of the camera language. They have a job which is embodying the character, having their behavior feel authentic as possible. And then we get on set, and I'm like, all right, looking into the camera. and then Anjanu's like, excuse me? And like, oh, POV. And she was like, I kind of remember reading that, And so it was a bit shocking, I think, to prepare this character and then go into a space in which you think you're going to be performing in a certain way, and then to be asked to be something you had never done before. To her credit, and to all of the actors' credits, and this is what actors do. Actors are actors. They act and they figure it out. She felt deeply isolated, not being able to actually touch and look into the eyes of the other characters while she's performing. And so she said what she did was she just used that as identification for Hattie. And so when you see her, when she comes to visit Elwood, and I mean, that's my favorite. She comes to visit Elwood and she can't see him, and she's out in the middle of that walkway, just kind of walking by herself. I think the reason why it feels so authentic is because she actually is. She actually feels isolated, lonely, and kind of abandoned in a way. And a lot of the way in which she moves in that scene, I can't account for. Like, I wouldn't say that it's my direction, you know, it's in the script. She knows what she's supposed to say, but how she holds it is the actor's job. And Elwood and Turner, Brandon and Ethan have a similar response, but they had each other. And there was always the other person behind the camera, which was the case for Anjanou, but Anjanou is a tactile person. Like she needs to be in communion and in relation. And so, yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Hi, Mireille. Thank you for inviting me.
Hello. I love that you're sitting the way you are.
I wanted something in between standing and sitting, so I think this is just perfect for me. But I have like two sets of questions, but what a lovely film. The way my body responded to it, I come from India and I come from a lower caste community, and we faced a lot of segregation too. And having to grow up with that kind of experience and kind of seeing it from a whole different point of view over here, to the point of view of race, was really chilling. My skin just wanted to like tear off because we were just slotted in the position of, you know, the character, which I thought was really interesting. But what I wanted to ask you about was the aspect of disorientation, which I thought was really interesting. Right, orientation is how we attach ourselves to spaces and how we feel belonged to spaces, both physically, socially, politically, and in so many other ways, right? But disorientation is the total opposite of that. How we can see the structures failing us, how we are suspended in space, and that kind of happens in two ways in this movie, both to the characters who are living disoriented lives because they're living segregated lives, but also to the character itself, but also to the audience members who are left disoriented, suspended in space. I think the experience of psychosis that you were talking about, right? Us experiencing that was so profound. And I wanted to know, one, whether it was a deliberate move as a filmmaker that you made, and secondly, how do you think disorientation and sort of just making films or writing stories can be a really powerful, narrative tool that we can sort of work with, that can be sort of an activist tool almost, that can jolt the reader or the viewer out of their space to think more closely with the character. Yeah.
Well, I must say, of all the Q&As I've done for Nickel Boys, that's probably the most well-articulated and interesting question in regards to the sort of deep ontology of the project and the pursuit. Yeah, so thanks for going there. I appreciate you're actually defining the words too. Because I'm like, well, what do you mean by disorientation? But then you said both, and I was like, damn, this guy's prepared.
Yes.
The disorientation is a byproduct of the process, you know? The disorientation isn't the original aim, but it happens, of course, once you decide to make the decision and you take yourself through a thought experiment of the ways in which it could produce a relationship between the audience and the characters and the story, et cetera, et cetera. I think the language that I was using that is similar to yours, but more situated in texts that I've read, is double consciousness, obviously. And, people, the first time I heard double consciousness and read it in, Du Bois' Souls of Black Folks, my first thought was like, but doesn't everyone have a double consciousness? Is it just that two-ness you're talking about, is it just people of color, or is it just a person in, we have a whisper in our head that is, we're observers to our own reality. We can't account for our own taste. I don't know why this tastes good to me. It wasn't because I decided, it just is. Isn't there something that's producing, and that falls into destiny and predestination and all these other biological and psychological and whatever questions. I think the idea of the film is to, it's fascinating because the film, I don't like making a piece of work that's not capable of being interpreted negatively or be misinterpreted, because if you can't get it wrong, then getting it right means nothing, you know? Then like understanding it is absolutely trash because it's just hand-fed you. So like, you can talk about this film like we're allowing people to cosplay in blackface, you know? Like, that is a fair interpretation. Now, whether or not that's reasonable, or whether or not that bears out anything aside from, you know, taking the worst perspective of what the gesture is, to be decided. The disorientation, I think, is something that everyone feels, and I always use blackness as a proxy for all social constructs, which is why I love the way you opened what you said, which was that you have your own version of the type of distance and oppression and otherness or whatever, and you leapt into this one, and you're both capable of feeling maybe what it felt like for those characters, but then you could also have it address yours. And that's more the goal, which is allowing someone to be more conscious of the way in which society sort of produces limitations on people, and also give someone an experience of art and cinema that is attempting at least to be in its metaphors and in its form and in its style and in its dialogue and in its construction. It's attempting to be as complex as the problems, because the cinema and television we watch is not it. Just because you're talking about, you have a film that has a narrative about slavery, a narrative about being queer, a narrative about whatever, that is not it. That's something, and that is part of this longer trajectory of getting to where we can actually make the art, especially in the commercial space, because all of you all know that artists, we could name many of them, that are doing things like this in their own ways and are really attacking some of the larger concerns in formal ways, experiential ways that are long-lasting, canonical, and in museums. But the form of the film and the gesture itself is really trying to be this open, it's not trying to be a mannequin, it's trying to be, a space of play to like let all of these things that we can consider come to an intersection. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you for this film.
Thank you.
I'm curious, what kind of input, if any, the author of the book had on this film?
What do you think? What do you think he would say?
Well, I didn't read the book, so it's difficult for me to say.
That's a nice answer. It's really funny. He, I get introduced to the book, and I asked my co-writer, Jocelyn Barnes, who was my co-writer at the time, if she wanted to write with me. We write, and then once we know that we're in it and we're gonna make it, I send Colson this email, and I'm just like, Colson, you're the best. You are the best, and I am your servant. But I really meant it. I was like, can't pay homage to you, we'll try. I always wanted to be a writer, but I couldn't, so I started taking pictures, and then he writes back cool guy, good luck. And at first I was like,
He's
damn.
Not worried. He's not worried.
But then you realize he was just actually good luck, and I hope you succeed. He saw Hell County this evening and liked it, and so he approved of me. He approved of the script, that he read it. And then I talked to Barry Jenkins, who made Moonlight and adapted The Underground Railroad, another one of Colson's books. And I asked him what his relationship to Colson was, and he was non-existent. And then I was like, it wasn't me. Yeah. Okay. I think Barry eventually had coffee with him or something, but way after the process. But
wow. You can't even get coffee with Colson.
I think you could if you hounded him, but apparently even now he's writing a book, but he's a very serious author, and I don't think is interested in the culture around movies and whatever.
But did he see this yet?
I think so, but
he didn't tell you anything? He didn't say nothing?
No.
I don't know if I like him now.
Man, I think he's the best. He's because he's he's the opposite of what you imagine being the process of adaptation, which is a person having to at least anxiously hold on to the values of the book, and it
right.
undermines cinema doing whatever cinema should do to the thing. And so his approach is revelatory. It's like, I made this thing, it's appreciated, and I would love for you to be you in it. I don't want to like put the clothes on you while you do the thing, you know?
Okay, that's not so bad after
Yeah.
all. I can
Colson
see your-
Whitehead.
I see your point. Yeah. This was such a treat. Thank you, RaMell Ross.
Pleasure is
Fabulous.
mine, genuinely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And our brilliant students.